Life is full of problems. Some tiny, some massive, some that arrive suddenly like a storm, and others that creep in so slowly you don't even notice until you're drowning. And for most of us, the temptation is to look for quick fixes, the magic answer, the one hack, the one book, the one opportunity that will erase all the noise and pain. But here's the truth, there is no magic. Problems don't vanish overnight. They don't disappear because you finally read the right motivational quote or followed the right influencer. They shrink or they grow, depending on the habits you live by every single day. The hidden power of habits. Habits are strange things. They're small, invisible, ordinary. Yet they build or break entire lives. Think about it. Every problem you face right now, whether it's financial stress, poor health, broken relationships, lack of focus, or feeling lost in your career, almost all of them can be traced back to one thing. A habit you have or a habit you don't. Spend impulsively, you'll face financial problems. Eat carelessly, health problems will follow. Avoid hard conversations, relationships crack. Refuse to plan, life feels chaotic. The world looks complicated, but it's usually our daily rhythms, the things we do without thinking, that quietly decide how messy or meaningful our lives become. Why this matters. Here's the beautiful part. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to solve all your problems at once. You don't even need 100 new routines. You just need a handful of powerful habits, the kind that create ripple effects so strong, they silently fix most of what feels broken in your life. These habits don't just put out fires. They prevent them. They don't just soothe the chaos. They build a foundation strong enough that chaos can't shake you the same way anymore. The journey we're about to take. In this video, we're going to break down 5 habits that have the power to fix 98% of your problems. That's not a slogan. It's not hype. It's simply the truth you'll discover once you practice them consistently. Because when you stop focusing on the noise on 100 different struggles and instead build a small set of strong daily practices, your life transforms. You start to see that problems aren't roadblocks. They're signals. They're reminders of where your habits need to grow stronger. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed by everything you need to fix, this is your moment to breathe. You don't need more willpower. You don't need more luck. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to commit to these 5 habits, quietly, consistently, and watch how they turn chaos into clarity. Let's begin. 1. Most of the problems in life don't come from what we lack. They come from what we've added. Too much noise. Too many distractions. Too many yeses to things that never deserved our energy in the first place. Chaos often disguises itself as opportunity. That's why people end up exhausted, stretched thin, and constantly overwhelmed. Not because they're lazy or incapable, but because they're drowning in excess. The first habit that can fix most of your problems? Simplify ruthlessly. Why simplicity works. Simplicity isn't about living a boring, empty life. It's about removing what doesn't matter so you have space for what does. Think of your mind like a glass of water. Every distraction, every unimportant task, every toxic relationship, every unnecessary purchase, it's like dropping dirt into the water. Before long, the glass is cloudy. You can't see clearly. You can't think clearly. Simplicity is the act of pouring out the dirt, leaving only what's clean. Suddenly, decisions feel easier. Life feels lighter. And problems, many of them fade, not because you solved them, but because you stopped creating them. Real-life examples. Money problems, half of them vanish when you simplify your spending. Track where it goes. Cut the pointless subscriptions. Cook at home. Live with less than you earn. Suddenly, you're not panicking about bills anymore. Stress problems? A massive chunk disappears when you simplify your commitments. Stop saying yes to every project, every social event, every obligation. Guard your time like treasure. Stress shrinks when your calendar does. Relationship problems? Simplify your boundaries. Don't spread yourself thin trying to please everyone. Invest in the few who matter most. The courage to cut, and here's the hard truth. Simplicity isn't always peaceful. At first, it feels brutal, because simplifying means saying no. It means cutting out habits you've clung to. It means letting go of people, opportunities, and comforts that are secretly draining you. It's pruning a tree, cutting back healthy-looking branches so the roots can thrive. Painful in the short term, powerful in the long run. The shift. Once you practice ruthless simplicity, you realize something incredible. Most of your problems weren't problems at all. They were distractions. They were clutter. They were consequences of saying yes too many times. By committing to less stuff, less noise, less chaos, you gain more. More clarity, more peace, more energy, more power to solve the few problems that actually matter. And when life feels lighter, every other habit we'll discuss becomes 10 times easier to build. 2. One of the hardest truths to swallow is this. Most of your problems are not someone else's fault. Yes, life throws curveballs. Yes, people hurt you. Yes, unfair systems exist. But if you wait for the world to change before you do, you'll stay stuck. The second habit that can fix almost everything? Take radical ownership of your life. Not partial ownership, not selective ownership. Radical ownership. Why this matters. When you blame, you give away your power. When you complain, you reinforce helplessness. When you wait for rescue, you delay progress. But when you own your choices, even the messy ones, you unlock the ability to change them. Ownership doesn't mean everything is your fault. It means everything is your responsibility. And responsibility is freedom. Because if you caused it, you can change it. If you tolerated it, you can stop it. If you neglected it, you can rebuild it. Real life examples. Financial problems, it's not the economy. It's your spending, your saving, your skills. Own it, and you can learn, adapt, earn. Health problems? Maybe your parents didn't teach you nutrition. Maybe you got bad advice. But today it's your plate. Your choices, own it, and you can heal. Relationship problems? You can't control how people treat you, but you can control what you tolerate, how you communicate, and when you walk away. Ownership puts the steering wheel back in your hands. Why most people resist it? Because ownership is uncomfortable. Blame feels good, it gives you a villain. Complaining feels good, it gives you sympathy. But both keep you weak. Ownership feels heavy at first. It means saying, I messed this up. It means admitting, I could have done better. It means facing the mirror without excuses. But here's the paradox. The weight of ownership makes you stronger. Excuses keep you fragile. Responsibility builds resilience. The shift. When you build a habit of radical ownership, problems shrink. Instead of, why is this happening to me? As you ask, what can I do about it? Instead of, they ruined everything, you say, I chose to stay. I can choose differently now. Instead of, life isn't fair, you whisper, maybe not. But I'm still responsible for what I do next. That mindset turns obstacles into training grounds. It turns setbacks into stepping stones. Because life doesn't get easier, you get stronger. And once you own your life, almost every other problem suddenly feels solvable. 3. If ownership gives you the wheel, discipline is how you drive. Discipline is not punishment. It's not about being rigid or joyless. It's about consistency, doing the small things every single day that protect you from bigger problems tomorrow. And if there's one habit that quietly fixes more problems than any other, it's this one. Daily discipline. Why discipline works? Think about it. Most problems don't arrive suddenly. They compound. Debt builds one swipe at a time. Weight gain builds one skipped workout at a time. Broken trust builds one small lie at a time. But the opposite is also true. Strong habits, repeated daily, build a life where problems don't pile up in the first place. That's the secret power of discipline. It solves today's issues and prevents tomorrow's. What daily discipline looks like? Discipline doesn't need to be dramatic. It lives in the ordinary. Waking up when you said you would. Moving your body even for 20 minutes. Tracking your spending before it spirals. Following through on a promise, even if no one notices. Sitting down to work even if you don't feel inspired. Each act of discipline looks small in the moment. But stack them together day after day, and you build a life where chaos struggles to take root. Why most people struggle with it? Because discipline feels hard now while problems feel far away. Skipping the gym feels harmless. Overspending feels fun. Breaking a promise feels easier. But each choice plants a seed. Discipline plants solutions. Laziness plants problems. The trouble is, seeds don't show results immediately. That's why people quit too soon. But those who persist, who water their daily habits even when nothing seems to change, wake up months later in a garden of solutions. The emotional shift. Discipline feels like restriction at first, but soon it feels like freedom. Because when you keep promises to yourself, you stop living in crisis mode. You stop scrambling to fix emergencies. You start enjoying the peace that comes from stability. Instead of panicking about money, you've already saved. Instead of fearing illness, you've already built strength. Instead of doubting yourself, you've already built self-trust. That's the gift of discipline, quiet confidence. The shift. When daily discipline becomes second nature, life feels lighter. Problems don't vanish, but they shrink. Because you've built habits that act like armor. Armor against financial chaos. Armor against health scares. Armor against broken promises. And when you walk through life with that kind of armor, almost nothing can knock you completely down. 4. Imagine driving a car but never looking in the rearview mirror. You might move forward, yes, but you'd also repeat the same mistakes, miss the same turns, hit the same obstacles, over and over. That's what life looks like without reflection. You keep running into the same problems. Not because you're cursed, but because you never stop to ask, why does this keep happening? The 4th habit that fixes almost everything? The habit of honest reflection. Why reflection matters. Most people live on autopilot. They make choices, deal with the fallout, then rush into the next moment. But if you never pause to examine what worked, what failed, and what could be done differently, life turns into a loop of repeated struggles. Reflection breaks the loop. It turns mistakes into teachers. It turns problems into lessons. It turns pain into wisdom. Real-life examples. Money problems. Reflection might reveal you're not broke because you don't earn enough, but because you spend emotionally when you're stressed. Health problems? Reflection might show you that every failed diet wasn't about food. It was about using willpower instead of building systems. Relationship problems? Reflection might uncover a pattern. You avoid hard conversations until resentment explodes. When you reflect honestly, you stop treating symptoms and start addressing causes. Why honesty is key. Reflection without honesty is just daydreaming. It's easy to look back and rewrite the story so you don't feel guilty. But true reflection requires brutal self-honesty. The courage to say, I hurt them because I wasn't listening. I failed because I didn't prepare. I keep getting stuck here because I'm scared to change. That honesty stings, but it heals. Because you can't change what you won't confront. How to practice it? Reflection doesn't need hours of meditation. It can be simple. Journaling. Write down your wins, mistakes, and lessons daily. Evening questions before bed ask, what did I do well today? What could I improve? What will I do differently tomorrow? Silent walks. Step away from screens, let your mind wander, and notice patterns. And slowly, problems that used to repeat themselves disappear because you've learned the lesson they came to teach. That's the magic of honest reflection. It turns pain into progress. 5. Knowledge doesn't change your life. Wishing doesn't change your life. Even reflection, as powerful as it is, doesn't change your life. Only action does. Not occasional action, not bursts of motivation, but consistent action. The kind you take even when you're tired, uninspired, or uncertain. That's the 5th habit that quietly fixes almost every problem. Why consistency matters. Think of water dripping on a rock. One drop does nothing, but steady drops over time carve valleys. That's what consistency does to your problems. They may look immovable, but with steady action, they erode. Money issues shrink when you save a little every week. Health issues shrink when you exercise regularly, not perfectly. Confidence issues shrink when you speak up often, even in small ways. Consistency compounds. It turns small, almost invisible steps into life-altering results. Why most people struggle with it? Because most people chase intensity instead of consistency. They sprint, burn out, then quit. They set huge goals, do too much too soon, and collapse under the weight of it. But real progress doesn't come from heroic bursts. It comes from ordinary persistence. From showing up again and again without drama, without excuses. Real-life examples. Writing a book? 1 page a day feels like nothing, but in a year you've written a novel. Building fitness? 10 push-ups a day feels laughable, but in a year your body transforms. Fixing finances? Saving $5 a day feels pointless, but in a year you've built a safety net. The actions look too small to matter until they stack up into something extraordinary. The emotional shift. At first, consistency feels boring. It lacks the thrill of starting fresh. It lacks the excitement of quick wins. But over time, it gives you something far better. Trust in yourself. Because every time you show up, even in a small way, you prove you can be counted on. And that trust dissolves problems like self-doubt, procrastination, and fear of failure. The shift. When consistent action becomes a habit, life stops being about waiting. Waiting for the perfect time. Waiting for the right mood. Waiting for motivation. You don't wait, you move. And movement, however small, always creates momentum. That's how problems get solved. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, step by step, until one day you look back and realize the problems that once felt enormous are simply gone. Here's the truth. Problems never fully disappear. Life will always hand you challenges, setbacks, and tests you didn't ask for. But with the right habits, those challenges stop feeling like life or death battles. They become manageable, they become smaller, they stop owning you. Think about what we just explored together. With ruthless simplicity, you cut out the noise that creates most of your stress in the first place. With radical ownership, you stopped giving away your power and started steering your own life. With daily discipline, you built the armor that protects you from tomorrow's crises. With honest reflection, you turned mistakes into teachers instead of prisons. And with consistent action, you transformed tiny, almost invisible steps into extraordinary results. Individually, each of these habits is powerful. But together they create a life where 98% of your problems simply can't survive. The deeper shift. When you live this way, you stop seeing yourself as someone who is constantly fixing things. Instead, you see yourself as someone who is building resilience, building peace, building a foundation so strong that when storms come, and they will, you bend, but you don't break. That's what habits do. They don't just solve problems, they give you a way of living that makes most problems irrelevant. A gentle reminder, don't overwhelm yourself by trying to master all 5 habits overnight. Pick one. Start small. Practice daily. Remember, it's not about intensity, it's about consistency. The magic happens not in a single breakthrough, but in 1,000 quiet decisions that, over time, change who you are and how you live. Closing thought. Someday, you'll look back at the problems that used to haunt you, and you'll realize they weren't monsters at all. They were signals. They were invitations to grow stronger, wiser, calmer. And because you chose these habits, because you showed up for yourself again and again, those problems became teachers and then they disappeared. Life won't ever be perfect, but it will be lighter. And in that lightness, you'll find clarity, strength, and the quiet joy of knowing you can handle whatever comes next.